What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Whiskey, Web, and Whatnot with myself, Robbie the Wagner, and my co-host, as always, Charles William Carpenter III.
Do it.
With our guest today, Taylor Desseyn. What's going on, Taylor?
What's going on? I do not have a third or a second or a first, so I kind of feel a little left out on that one.
That's true. Well, I mean, you can't be an official host, but you can be a guest anytime.
Could I be a sire?
Ooh, possibly. You do have children, so you have sired. So why not?
There you go. There you go.
Taylor the sire, the court
Actually, has a
sire.
ring to it.
Yeah, I like it. This is some new branding. I expect to
It
see
is.
some
I
shifting.
think we're just working on my new rebrand on the pod.
So, before we jump in, can you give a quick intro into who you are and what you do?
You know, you guys caught me at a career transition, by the way. So I am actually leaving the company I've been at for 12 years. I'm very thankful for my time. So I'm a recruiter. So for those of you who do listen in the future, if you're like, nope, not listening to this episode because this is a recruiter and I hate recruiters, please don't go. I promise it'll be good. But I've been doing it for 12 years now at a company called Vaco. We are a billion-dollar staffing and consulting company. And Vaco really does it the right way. It just became apparent just with my journey and my passion for building community among engineers that it makes sense for me to be at an engineering company and to be more ingrained in the tech ecosystem. And so I'm moving on and got some interviews and I'm looking at potentially joining a software consulting company very soon, potentially. So.
Ooh,
Nice.
Big news.
Yeah.
Very awesome. So I guess before we dive into all of that process and where hiring is these days and some of the many reasons we wanted to have this chat with you, I think we should just start with a whiskey, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why some people are here. All right, so
That's why
today,
I'm here.
there you go. I wouldn't invite you otherwise. Today we're having the Copper Sky Distillery, which I think they're out of Colorado. It is their wheat whiskey, wheat, like that. 100 proof.
Wheat thins.
Yeah, wheat thins, whiskey. 5 years old. Oh, you're going straight for the rocks. Okay. I'm not fooled by the ones you got. Yeah, 100 proof, 5 years old. I have batch 7. I'm assuming we kind of have the same. I don't know.
I have
Give or
7.
take. Okay. 7's the magic number. The mash bill is 51% corn, 45% wheat, and then 4% malted barley. So it should have a decent amount of sweetness to it, I think.
That is good. It's like a summertime whiskey. Like you're kind of sitting on the porch and it's like 90 degrees outside and you got a tank top on. You're sweating a little bit in the armpits. I think
yeah.
this is the whiskey.
And you're like, you know what would be refreshing? Whiskey.
a brown liquor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what'll make me forget how damn hot I am? Whiskey.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm
it's
smelling
good. I like it.
s'mores in here. Like
A little
some
creme
marshmallow.
brulee.
Ooh, yeah, I was gonna say brown sugar, and so like toasted sugar or something could
Yeah.
definitely be on that.
So, boys, can I be honest with y'all and tell you a quick story about my whiskey days?
Yes.
Sure.
Are your whiskey days over? And this is
Yeah,
a past
they're
tense?
way over because of
Okay.
jail.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
Yeah. So basically, a little storytelling as y'all are doing a little sniffy sniff. Basically, I was in a band. The band is called Cherry Case, not Chevy Chase, not Cherry Cake. Those were both on venue doors, but Cherry Case. We moved to Nashville to do music like everyone else, right? And that's why I'm here. That's why I got here. I did the honky tonks until 3 a.m. I did the touring. I did the studio row. But the last month before we were supposed to leave to Nashville, our lead guitar player moved back from LA. So we tried to make it. He left us, tried to make it in LA as like a pop guitarist. Moved back after a year. He never exuded the LA vibe. So our first night back, we were so excited and we were leaving the next month for Nashville. So we're like, let's go out. Okay. So we go out to like the one hipster bar in a college town full of Sperry's and pink shorts and seersucker, right? I went to the University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks.
Yep.
And
Or just Cox.
actually all of the merch I have just says Cox all over it. And so basically I will send you boys hats when I go back home. And so we went out, got a little crazy. So just to let you know the type of bar, sticky floor bar, $5 Long Island iced tea pitchers, $5 and $1 warm bourbon shots. And so at the time we were the band that was leaving town to go make it in Nashville. And so everybody was buying us $1 lukewarm bourbon shots. And so Your boy at the time, obviously, I partook really hard. Our guitar player's girlfriend was making her rounds kissing everybody. And my wife knows this story, so this is pure public information. She kissed me, don't remember at that point in the evening. And then they ran out, and the boyfriend got mad at the girlfriend, like typical boyfriends do. And then the cops were called because there was obviously some yelling. And then they pulled up. We're still friends. He's actually a data scientist now. He was in my face and they took us to jail. And after that, I swore off bourbon and whiskey. But this is really good stuff that you provided. So thank you.
Oh, wow. So
if you guys got to cut that out, I understand. But I just want to give you a little backstory.
We don't,
we don't cut anything. We're unedited here.
I love it.
Yeah, that's the whole point. It's kind of like whatever comes about. You got some like notes and whatever. Obviously, the whiskey is kind of predetermined, and the rest of it goes where it goes. I think that's kind of part of the fun.
I love it. Yeah, so that's my little story. Oh, and by the way, Robbie, my grandparents lived on Twin Chimneys Drive. Please don't tell me you're on Twin Chimneys Drive.
I'm not, no.
Okay. All right. That would have been weird. It's like you're in my grandparents' old lake house.
Yes, that would have been the best. It turns out that comes around full circle. So we'll spend a few moments, though, coming back to the whiskey and then maybe talking about more whiskey-esque associated stories. Okay, so yes, this one, we have the tentacle scale. So it's 1 through 8. 8 tentacles, we're so clever. 1 being I'd never have this again, it's disgusting. 8 being like, this is the best one ever, give me nothing else. So 4 being kind of your average thing. And we'll kind of categorize things like, so this is a wheated bourbon. So you think about it in the ways of like your Weller's or Maker's Mark or something of that nature. So typically we'll have some more sweetness to it. For this one, for me, I actually find it pretty tasty too. And I also like it has a little burn on the way down. It's letting me know it's there without being like too in my face or hurting my throat or giving me acid reflux because I'm an old man. Definitely got like some of the brown sugary mapley kind of notes in the middle. I actually got some lemon rind like as it sat in my mouth for a moment. So like a little
orange. I even got some orange.
Yeah. Some might say apricot, depends. But
every time.
Every time. No, I just throw it in there for Robbie. I don't recall the price point on this one because I didn't order it. Just shows up, which sometimes will affect my opinions on this. I like it though. I like it a lot. I think that it has a lot of flavor and depth. Doesn't have like a spicy cinnamon bit to it.
Doesn't.
No, not at all. This is like quite smooth and easily sippable. I'm gonna give it a 7, which is surprising because like a lot of the things that I've had out of like smaller distilleries around the West and Colorado, rough. Yeah, it can be rough, or it can be just like okay. If I learned that this was like a $70 bottle, I'd still be like okay with that. I'd be like, well, yeah, but it's pretty good. It's age stated. They're doing these batches. Yeah, it hits all the right notes for me. So as a weeded whiskey, I'd give this a 7 for me.
Robbie, what about you, man?
Yeah, I think for me, this is about as good as the like Weller Antique, whatever that was. The one that was good, not the one that was bad.
It's the 107. Yeah. So it's the Weller Antique 107. So it's 107 proof and
I think
highly weeded.
This is cheaper than that, and I would say it's about as good. So I think 7 is right in line there. 7 tentacles.
Yeah, the irony there is that before the Great Whiskey Rush, like an antique bottle would cost you about $30. Now they're 100 or so, but thanks Buffalo Trace for ruining that.
I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I don't really drink whiskey. It makes my body recoil. I'm giving this an 8, and it makes me feel better that y'all were a 7 because like, you think it's that good for a guy who I just poured a little more for whatever it's worth. So like this is. It's really good. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Do me a favor. Don't end up in jail tonight. I'm gonna feel bad.
I'm gonna tweet at you guys. Like I'm actually going out with a buddy of mine after this, and I'm gonna tweet y'all. Hey guys, headed to jail again. I got really stopped whiskey from here.
Looks like I just don't want to learn that like you were on the wagon and then we sent you whiskey and it's just a downward spiral from here.
I'm having tacos after this, so we'll be good.
Yeah. You'll switch to tequila and it no longer becomes our fault.
It's never not y'all's problem after that.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, gosh. All righty. So we had a couple of hot takes we were going to talk about today as well. So we just take a look at things people talk about in tech Twitter. Although I think this first discussion goes well beyond that. Obviously, we were all at Render together. You were on a panel with Kelly Vaughn, and you guys were just talking about like what is going on with hiring. Full disclosure, I'm on the market. I've been feeling the pain for a while. And I'm like, what the hell is this? From like the last time I was actually looking, like before it was you have a network and you have a couple of referrals and you just kind of decide where you want to go next and work with your friends and do some cool things. Yeah. And I've been through the ringer, a number of like 8-step loops that have like been misses based on very small like minutia, like industry I'm in or whatever else. Like, yeah. So is hiring broken is the big question, and I'm sure we can go all over the place with it. But like, what's up with hiring?
I think the headline is yes, hiring is broken. I think it's very software development. Like y'all always say, it depends. It really depends, right? It depends based off of who you're interviewing with. But the problem is that it needs to be more approachable. I'm not asking for a standardization. Like I was talking to somebody, I think it was this morning on my podcast. I do have one as well. We were like, there should be a way to like standardize like at least like the first bar of interviews across the tech industry. But the problem is it'll never happen. And so all we can do is have these podcasts and try to help educate even one hiring manager to change the process, right? Like I would tell you, like it's frustrating the fact that you were rejected for a job because of an industry. It's like really at the end of the day, we're solving problems. And problem solving is problem solving is problem solving. To me, I would say you missed out, that company missed out on a great talent, right? You, because they were too concerned about the industry. And so, I'm really big on creating a massive funnel, massive pipeline. One of the talks I'm giving next month at that conference up in Wisconsin, I'm keynoting, but one of my sub talks I'm giving is a manifesto in hiring. And it's essentially a checklist for what companies need to do. And companies think they need to go like 5 people in the first round, 3 people in the second round, 1 person in the final round. But in actuality, you really should probably have like 5 people going into the final round because of the way interviewing works. But the problem is that hiring managers they just cut it off way too early, and then they're left with not a lot of diversity, not a lot of people, and then they're back to square one, and then they try to force a square hole in a round peg. So there you go. The whiskey's already
It's already started. Yeah, no, okay, so I do want to regress back a little bit there to something you said too, is you're not advocating necessarily for standardization, but I do think it's maybe a potential interesting question, right? Because if you compare it to a lot of other industries, like a doctor doesn't go in and perform a surgery to show that they know how to do it, right? To get on at a hospital, right? There's standardization around like proving that you have the knowledge and accreditation to that. So that right there, I wonder if there's a way to like have accreditation.
Well, there is. It's called contract to hire.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that too.
The problem is that, and I understand it, there's a lot there to unpack, right? People are going to hear this like, great, typical recruiter, contract to hire. I get it. I've heard all of it. I've been in it for 12 years. The reason why I just think contract to hire is the best solution for both sides is because realistically, so I'm in the interview process right now, right? It's very meta, and I'm documenting the whole thing, like a recruiter in the interview process, documenting it. And the one thing I'm realizing is that you can't even talk about all the things you want to talk about in an interview process. Like in full transparency, and if my future employer hears this, down the road, here we are, I'm close to potentially a few offers, and I don't know much about what's going on because there hasn't even been the time to even get the second, third, fourth layer of what the company's doing and the goals and all that. And so that's why I think contract to hire works so well, is because it allows the company to get a 6-month, 3-month overview of how that person works in their environment. But again, the problem is benefits and what are you going to do if it doesn't work out? I mean, listen, I understand all of it. If there was a way to somehow keep contract to hire and have the benefits, which by the way, I don't know if this is like in every state. I literally just signed up for benefits for my family, not even through the company. I just signed up for benefits through Farm Bureau. So now I have benefits whether I go with the company or not. And it was really easy for me. So I don't know if it's like that in every city, but I would employ people to look into that because it was really easy for me to get. And it's better benefits than what I have right now. So again, I think contract to hire is the answer to your question, but there's a lot to unpack there and how to standardize it too, for sure.
I think I agree with that in the sense of it's basically fairly impossible to replicate the job in an interview process,
100%.
Right?
And
the
closest
you can get,
never even close.
Yeah. I'd say the closest you can get is pair programming exercises.
Correct.
I'd advocate for you're going to work with this person and this is the work you're going to do. The downside is there's really kind of no onboarding into familiarity and people are nervous. And so it's just like, obviously isn't a one-to-one, but it's almost as close as you can get from like a technical skills and thought process thing. But it is, regardless, it's still highly subjective. If I am interviewing someone and I'm pair programming with them, it is whatever my interpretation of that is completely subjective to my viewpoint and my experiences prior to that. So again, that I might be rejecting a candidate or be rejected as a candidate based on very subjective circumstances. That puts you closer to the quick to hire, quick to fire if it doesn't work out kind of thing. And that's both sides of the equation.
100%.
I think most of the interview process is stupid. If there's a leadership question, it's like, tell me about a time you did a thing. Like, just because I answer it that way doesn't mean I can or cannot do the job any better than anyone else. So, like, to me, the best thing to do for technical jobs is, like, if you can show a lot of stuff you've done, examples of that, and, like, stuff on GitHub or whatever. And then, like, for me, if I were interviewing, I'd just be like, prove that you're you. If I can see online all that you've done and you just go, hey, it's me, I go, cool, let's work together. Like,
well, and that's what I want to give a shout out to B. Dougie, Brian Douglas with Open Sauce. He was on one of my podcasts. I have two because a man can't have too many podcasts. But basically, like what he's trying to do with like GitHub, trying to build a public portfolio, really try to give a full picture of like what the candidate can do versus what's on the resume. Like that's the type of stuff where I think companies are going to have to start looking more ahead and doing things like that, be more creative. And again, it's about meeting people where they're at. That's what I've learned, right? Diversity, hiring, inclusion. I just got off a call about it, so that's why it's kind of fresh in my brain about that. You got to meet people where they're at. And the problem is it's backwards. It's like, you got to meet us where we're at. And it's
Right.
like, no, no, like let's meet in the middle at least. And until that's fixed across the board, I think it's going to consistently be an uphill battle.
Yeah, I think there's perhaps there'll be some kind of massive reset in it. I mean, so it's interesting because it has felt like for so long the advantage was on the side of engineers, right? And it was sort of that. And now it feels like it's been a quick pendulum swing the other way, which, you know, and fair enough, there's control on that side of it. And so it's just swung really hard on that other side. So hopefully we can kind of meet somewhere in the middle and have some sanity in this process. And so I've been at it for a few months, and there's a real like emotional and mental toll through this. Like to go through these things and have like, oh my gosh, I have friends here and oh man, we're talking and I'm meeting all these people and it's going awesome. Can't wait to work together. You're my number one choice. This is pretty much a done deal. VPs are saying when we work together. Exactly. I met a CTO for 30 minutes, and in a 30-minute time frame where he controlled the conversation, I didn't give enough detail and context in a few things. So then was not a unanimous through 8 people. Yes, lost that. That's a blow. That's a serious blow.
there's a lot of weird stuff with like all the layers of interviewing. I just think all of it is like most of it is wrong. So I work for Amazon now, some background. We're interviewing for a like backfill role, and they were like, oh, this person like didn't do things like in Ember, like we use Ember, and like they wanted it all to be tech stack specific or whatever. I thought he like blew away the requirements just using React. Me and this other guy were talking about how good he was and whatever, and somebody else was like, oh, well, he didn't like answer this one question the way I liked, and like that kind of shuts the whole thing down. And it's just like, I don't understand, like there needs to be a better system where like if one person has a bad experience interviewing you, that it doesn't shut the whole thing down. There's like a way to come back from that and say like, oh, I had a bad day that day, like here's some reasons why you should still hire me.
You know, golly, there's so much. I love talking about this shit. Can we curse? Is that fine?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. No, I mean, so I just got the phone with Carrot. So Carrot, what they're doing, they're at Render. They had some sick headshots. I don't know if you've seen the headshots coming out of Carrot's booth, but it's so good. I'm so jealous that I didn't take advantage of that. But I just got the phone with them. They're actually helping increase diversity in the interviewing process and actually handling first rounds for like some big companies. They're trying to standardize like what we're talking about. They have the option to do a do-over. They have talked with their companies that they have agreed with and like, listen, we want to give. And what they've noticed is that Black engineers are 2 times more likely to use the redo than white engineers. And I think that's a fascinating observation. I think it's incredibly important to have something like that built in place, right? Listen, you're not going to get you on a good day. Listen, I've been interviewing now for 2 weeks. Shit's exhausting. And I have talked with people for a living for 12 years. The energy that you have, it's like podcasting all day. Because let's face it, like you got to bring another sense of like, I can't zone out with you guys right now because I'm like, whoa, what'd you say? It's going to be a disaster. And you got to bring a certain amount of energy through the microphone for people to keep listening to you. You can't just sit here and cakewalk through it. And so it's like that with interviews. And sometimes you're just not going to hit it. You're just not. And it's like, as a hiring manager, you could be missing out. I'll never forget this story. It's Becca, who is actually at Open Source Labs now with Brian as like their community head advocate. And she was telling me like a year or two ago, she was looking for jobs and there was a travel requirement for a job. It said 4 times a year. Well, she has 3 kids. And so she didn't submit a resume. And it's like, did that job actually need to travel 4 times a year? Or is it really 1 time a year, but they said 4 times because they just wanted to overcompensate just to make sure. But then you missed out on an amazing person like Becca, right? And so it's like, those are things companies have to keep in mind. And like with your interview, who cares he missed one question? Like, really? Like we're gonna reject
7 other
that
people
one
were like,
question?
yes, let's work together. We can't wait.
Something's got to be changed, and that's why Kelly and I are so passionate about it. And we've actually submitted our talk to a few conferences in the Southeast together because I've been a recruiter for 12 years. She's a director of engineering, and we see it on both ends, and we text all the time about what we're seeing. And then it's really got to be fixed. And I think it's going to take people like us on this pod. It's going to take podcasts to change it, unfortunately, because there's no other medium to get through to hiring managers than podcast and content.
Yeah, just a strong public voice. I think that's what I still like about Twitter. People complain all the time, but is that you can be kind of transparent and real, and we're developing an audience. You know, you have 14 podcasts, we have this one. And but yeah, no, I just think like being transparent and being open about your experiences without fear of retribution in some way, I guess. I mean, I feel like if somebody listens to my podcast and decides they wouldn't want to work with me, there's nothing more genuine than these discussions that I'm having. That we're having.
There's another podcast. His name's Tim Ross. He was talking about vulnerability, and he was talking about, you know what? I will accept anybody if they are vulnerable to me, even if they tell me they do not like me. Because you know why? He goes, I am meeting that person where they're at, and if they feel comfortable enough telling me that, that's okay, and I can live with that. But it's the inauthenticity that I can't stand for. And it's the same thing with what you just said. If an employer doesn't want to work with me because of my floral shirts or my cursing, then I'm okay with that. And I really am, because I want to be at a place that I feel accepted. And I think that's what companies need to be mindful of when it comes to interviewing, is that making people feel accepted. Because I tell people, I think majority of the interview is backwards, right? Robbie, kind of going back to you, like I think 60%, 70% of the interview needs to be the company selling the opportunity to the candidate. Right now, it's 70% of the candidate selling themselves to the company, when in actuality, the company has the responsibility to make sure that that individual feels comfort. People are like the family, and I understand that analogy. People don't like that. But essentially, you are coming into an environment that is a family-esque type of environment, so you need to feel somewhat comfortable.
Yeah. In Robbie's case, we're talking about one of the traditional FANG companies, and it's Mang or whatever the hell it is now. They've always been known as being like the challenge to get in the door because you're going to get a bunch of options and get rich, blah, 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 right? So they can set up their gatekeepers however they want. At least that's always been kind of the thought process. True or not, whatever. But the fact that that is like spread out and become part of like, I mean, I've interviewed with startups that have a similar loop process, and the fact that it's extended out and everybody's gatekeeping at this point, but then you're not getting the same monetary benefits. Let's just be honest. You know, that's part of the game. It's not the only reason why I work, but I have a family to feed. I'm the sole provider. I'm like, money matters to a degree. That's just the truth. And to like push those kinds of gates all over the place, I think is where some of the fallacy lies.
Well, and I talk about ego. I think there's a lot of ego wrapped up in hiring, right?
Yeah.
So again, I was texting with somebody, and their spouse is interviewing, and they were like, there's another round. And it's like, that round is there because that VP wants to have a say. There's all these people within organizations that want to have a say. I want to pump my chest and make sure that I feel validated and heard. And the problem is that those egos are slowing down your interview process. When in actuality, let's be honest, dude, you probably don't need to have that conversation because you're not even going to manage that person. You're not even going to see that person. So why the fuck are you even interviewing them, right? I think, again, there's so much ego wrapped up in hiring that the companies who can set their ego aside, actually be intentional with the people who are interviewing the candidates that are actually going to be involved from day to day and just back out. Like for me, like when the way I hire, I'll talk to you for 20 minutes. I would have 3 people that would interview you based off the core competencies that we would look for, right? One was culture, one was tech ability within the recruiting space, and one was just overall process and procedures. And it was like bang, 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 bang. We offered. It's not hard. It's not hard.
Yeah, I agree. You have a need. They have a need. Is this a good fit? You seem like mutual success exists here. Great. You know what?
And then somebody on my team says, like I'll never forget. There's one guy we interviewed, and I was like, we need to hire this guy. Like this guy's great. And literally, my team goes, no, he won't work. And I was like, are you serious? And instead of like beating my chest and getting what I want, I said, you know what? You're right. Let's move on. And it was hard. It was so hard because I was so ready for. God, I was thinking like dollar signs. This guy is going to take us to the moon. And then my team was like, no. And I was like, you know what? I got to respect that. Like, I'm going to put my ego aside. I'm going to respect my team and make sure we keep the team intact and move on.
Yeah. You were mentioning VPs want to have a say in everything and stuff. And I think that is just showing that they don't trust their directors and whoever they've hired. Like, if you really trust them, you shouldn't care. Be like, hire whoever's good for your team. See you later. I don't get it.
It boils down to trust and ego. Lack of ego and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ego is the, what is that? There's a book like Ego is the Enemy or something like that.
I don't
right?
read, so
I don't either.
Maybe an audio book or something. Yeah, it's the Stoicism guy who has books. Anyway, Ego is the Enemy, I think is what it's called. It's available in audiobook, guys. Come on, I know you'll listen.
Can you read it for me, like out loud?
Here's the deal. I have like 2 podcasts on rotation. Yeah. And my wife always sends me like podcasts I should listen to, and I never do. She's like, why don't you listen to my podcast? It's like, I got the same 2 podcasts on rotation, and if I don't got enough time, I'm not going to work in another one. So
okay. I'm curious as to what they are. What are the 2?
Yeah. So I do got to give a plug. I'm actually I bought an NFT.
Ooh, rug pull.
It wasn't really an NFT. It's an NFT, but it's not like you could buy with your credit card. But essentially their name is Group Chat. They're fantastic. They are 3 guys out in LA. Their network is vast. Come from a financial background, economics background, but they're just dudes like us, and they talk politics and culture. And so I'd highly check them out. Group Chat. The other one I listen to off the top of my head is, hold on real quick.
Whiskey Web and Whatnot. What?
Yeah, is actually, so another one too, Long-Winded by Nature. Mm-hmm. It's Tim Chusano. He's an executive at a modern day agency up in New York, and he has over 1 million followers on TikTok, and he became famous because of his vlogs. And he has a business podcast where he actually just talks to you, like he talks about new hires and how to be successful in the workplace. And it's like I'm all about tactical, practical information. That's why my podcast, Guidance Counselor 2.0, is based around specific things a person can take in the job search or hiring, because I think there's a lot of fluff out there in today's podcast world. And so I like Tim Chusano's podcast as well.
Yeah, see,
by Nature.
This is where we've traded places, because I might read books, but my podcasts are really like guilty pleasures kind of thing. Like I've been rolling through Smartless for the last couple of months. It's funny. It's off the cuff. There's some famous people, funny stories, the Hollywood entrenched. Yeah. I don't know. I just find it super interesting. And then the hosts are all pretty funny. So I don't, here we go. We've switched.
Are you saying
knowledge and
that Chris Coyier is not famous or funny? You can't listen to Shop Talk and get both funny and,
watch out. He may listen to this one.
I mean, I think he's famous in certain circles. Obviously he got in the state of JS. He's been around forever. Everybody's been on CSS tricks 100 different times to help them solve centering a div and, things like that. And nice guy, very funny in person. So I think like when I put on a podcast, I'm kind of just disconnecting. So I don't want to be like, oh, I'm back in tech now, because it's usually, I don't know, driving somewhere or something of that nature. So I will tailor the hack for your wife getting you to listen to all the podcasts that she wants is just go on a road trip with her. And then she takes over, obviously, radio controls. And then, kids in the back watching a movie on iPad, plugs in Crime Junkies or something else which, by the way, I will never betray my wife because she knows how to get away with murder. She's listened to too many things where people disappear or get murdered and whatever else. So I'm like, okay, healthy fear here. But yeah, that's exactly. Now we should get really to an important question. Okay, speaking of hot takes and things on Twitter or whatever else, HOAs, yay or nay?
That was crazy. Vic tweeted that, and then Wheeler got involved, and like that shit was wild. What was that about?
I don't even know. It's just these tangents just
give me some
appear.
backstory here. What happened?
Vic, he's a senior developer at Twilio, I think. He's in Raleigh. He tweeted something, complaining about his HOA, which I had an HOA when I lived on the other side of Nashville when I was single, and that was crazy. It was basically like somebody was watching you at all times. It was the weirdest thing. I was dating my now wife at the time, and she would come over and like go on walks while I was working, and like they would stop her and be like, hey, like just a heads up, do you know somebody here? Why are you walking? Be careful. And she was stopped on multiple occasions to the point where she stopped walking. And again, I just caught snippets of it on the internet, but it is a thing, and my experience with HOA has not been positive.
Yeah, I think it ends up being a bunch of boomers yelling about like the shade of tan or how many weeds are in your yard or
it's
something
just people
of that
getting
nature.
bored. It's old people getting bored who don't have hobbies. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't want to overly generalize, but it does kind of feel
Old
like
people
that.
get hobbies. Go
Just get other hobbies.
listen
like,
to crime podcasts instead.
Yeah, there you go.
Or
Go
this
on a walk
podcast.
and don't.
or
listen to
this
one.
podcast.
Yeah. Go on a walk and don't bother
Yeah.
the other walkers. How about
Seriously.
Yeah, the house we're moving into has a lot of weird stuff in their HOA docs. Like, I think it's all innocent enough, but it's stuff like you can't keep your garage door open. Like, it must be closed. There can be no trash on the premises, and like you can't park a car outside. Like, your car has to be in the garage.
Situation.
Yeah. It's weird stuff that I'm like, do you really care? Like, is someone going to walk by and be like, hey, I see your car's outside? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
my condo complex, they did.
okay.
It's a reason why some normal size houses here in Arizona have 3 and 4 car garages. Everybody drives everywhere. It's kind of like LA like culture. There's
too hot.
Everybody drives. Everybody has a second car or like third, fourth car because if you have teenagers, then they need their own car. And some of these HOAs force you to be parked inside, so you can't just have a car sitting in your own damn driveway. And you pay for this privilege. So, and I've seen the extreme cases of why HOAs exist because somebody paints their house purple or something and drags someone else's property value, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And the houses in some of these subdivisions are close. And so then it's like, oh, I got to stare at this thing all the time. I don't know. I guess I get the extreme cases, but it feels like it's an overkill correction.
100%. Yeah, I know much more about hiring than I do HOAs. So
Yeah, same. I've purposely, because I've heard always nightmare stories, I've always avoided that. So I'm like, HOA, I'm out, not buying, not renting there, don't want anything to do with it.
Something that HOAs would not approve of. Tell us about all the horses on your property. Are all those yours, or?
Yeah, pretty fortunate. We lived in the quote unquote hip side of town in East Nashville for a long time. My wife saw it. She bought a house for around $200,000 back in 2000, I think 11 or 12, and we sold it for $760. She grew up riding horses, and we always wanted to get some land, and so we found a place 25 minutes north of downtown. Like literally after this pod, I'm going downtown to hang out with my buddy in East Nashville in 25 minutes. And so we have 15 acres up here and we have 4 horses, and she's got another 6 or 7 back at her parents' house up in Kentucky.
What?
Oh,
Finish.
No, go ahead. No, your face was pretty incredible. You were shocked about something that just happened.
Well, there's just so many overlaps here. Like you were saying, you spent a lot of time in Roanoke, and on whatever Magic Lake that Robbie's living at
Smith
right
Mountain,
now.
dude, Smith Mountain.
Smith Mountain.
It's
Yeah,
nice.
now,
Yeah.
now that you said it, I might go there. I don't trust Robbie that much, but
hey, you're invited.
yeah, I know. Yeah, could happen. TBD. So I grew up in Kentucky, northern Kentucky.
Oh,
Right on the Ohio River across from Cincinnati.
Covington?
Yeah. I was born in Covington.
Yep.
So
That's
you
awesome.
know what
So
Covington is.
Yeah, so I did some consulting work for our Cincinnati office on content creation for about 6 to 9 months, and we ate dinner in Covington and hung out there. So that was great. And my guy who helps head up my content, he's based out of Lexington, but one of my videographers out of Covington. So
That is so funny. So where in Kentucky is she from?
Bowling Green.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So basically Tennessee. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like right across the state line. But
Right.
yeah, her parents. We were looking for a farm like her parents. Her parents has 20 acres of like rolling hills, and it's just beautiful. And we got it pretty close. We don't have quite the hills, but our house does sit on a little slight slope. And I'll tell you this: if we're ever invaded by zombies or aliens, I think we'll be good because we have a 360 view of the entire property.
Nice. So
Nice.
you've got a good complex. Yeah, a complex is.
Do
is a
you
safe
have
part,
to
I would say.
bush hog all your fields, or do you hire someone to do it?
No, so my wife, we have reverse gender roles in this household. So I do all the laundry and cleaning, and she does all the handiwork. And I'm totally comfortable with that. We bought a rugged grasshopper, and she was mowing the lawn yesterday. So speeding around this thing on a 360 turn type lawnmower. So
nice,
it's like
nice.
watching her drive a NASCAR.
Yeah, the yin yang kind of balance. That's nice. I mean, as long as somebody's doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wear floral shirts and don't get my hands dirty,
All
and just talk on podcast all day.
That's all right. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. If it's working, go with it.
We just sold our house like a month ago now, I guess. We had 10 acres, and I was bush hogging that all the time. I don't want that anymore.
I was gonna say, turns out for Robbie, farm is not the answer. But you tried. You gave it a real swing.
Yeah.
It's so peaceful. There's so much people in tech that have left tech to do farm stuff. I mean, especially during COVID, especially on Twitter, I saw a lot of people are like, I'm out. I'm going to go to a ranch. I know there's one guy on Twitter, like just left tech altogether and just to try to get out. And I think there's a lot there, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of brain fatigue, and I think there's just a lot of fatigue in general, especially because of COVID. One thing I've realized is we're all overworked. We just are. Like we took on a lot, and a lot of us haven't been able to kind of release that workload. And so I think there's a lot of similarities with tech folks of getting out and doing stuff. I think I saw on Twitter a while back, like some guy he was like a tenured Microsoft guy, finally left, just started gardening. There's just a lot there because I think just our brains are fried. And I think we need space. And I'm really big on that creative, like during this transition for me about, leaving my job, I'm watching like a lot of YouTube to get inspired, right? To create content. Cause that's what I do kind of full time. And that's what I'm looking to do in the next company is kind of be there, basically create meaningful content for that company. And trying to give yourself space is something that's very difficult. I think people struggle with tremendously. I've talked with a lot of senior leaders in tech about writing in breaks and sprint planning for their engineers, because at the end of the day, like, let's face it, a lot of engineering problems are solved when you're walking, not when you're in front of the computer screen.
Right. That's the problem with hourly billing. We talk about an agency who has to bill hourly when the brain trust is, or when people micromanage. Are you in front of your computer? Are you hands on keyboard and stuff?
What did
And
you
it's
do
like,
for the last 47 seconds?
Right, exactly. Like those
Went to
kinds
the
of
bathroom, relax.
yeah, exactly. I'll do it in your chair next time. Come in the office.
Today's actually been one of those days. I finally am getting water in my system right now with the whiskey. So like it's been one of those days where I haven't been able to get out to even get water yet.
Yeah. So today's vlog is going to be real boring, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Been
My
in
wife's
one
so
place.
funny. The only thing my wife watches on my social, because she's like, you just post a lot. And I go, I understand. Like, it's not meant to be consumed every single time. But she does watch my vlogs every day. And she was like, I was like, hey, like I'm trying a different style. Like I'm trying to do more cuts, make it more engaging. And she goes, I'm gonna be honest with you, it kind of looks a little boring. You're kind of just at your desk the whole time. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. But I'm talking about everything else. She goes, yeah, it looks good. I said, okay, cool. So,
All right, great. Yeah, you're like, this isn't going to be like movie of the week, but
yeah. But it's storytelling, right? And it makes you a better storyteller. And it makes, because again, like for me, I've talked a lot about this with my content guy. I'm like, should I go buy DSLR and like try to start creating content out of a camera? And he was like, why? He was like, literally, people don't care. As long as it looks good and the audio is decent and it's filmed relatively well, people will consume whatever you put out.
you know who does care? The other people doing it also. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, nice setup. I like this in the background. But most of your audience probably doesn't care.
No,
Yeah.
and I mean, I can't tell you how many relationships I've made with a bunch of tech guys and gals who have farms and have messaged me out of nowhere. And there's like a bunch of recruiters out there. There's a recruiter at Tesla. He messaged me the other day. He goes, dude, you have a corgi? I was like, yeah. He goes, dude, I have one too, and proceed to send each other pictures of corgis we've never met in person before. And so it's like just the power of, and that's what I'm really passionate about, right? The power of content, how it endears you to your community, but then also from a company perspective, how do you seem more approachable in the marketplace, in your marketplace? And the way to do that is through content, whether it's vlogs or whether it's other types of content around what y'all do, or testimonials or case studies, stuff like that. So that's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Although I think like counterpoint to that is we were talking earlier about the whole rushing out to farms after 10 years of just the grind and whatever else. I wonder if like the pace of just tech work in general has really started to burn people out, right?
It's an interesting, kind of point where I'm at, right? Because I do content for business development, right? So there's a sales aspect to what I do. Surprise. If I don't post for today, I could not reach that one person to get that one lead, to get that one job, right? So it's like it's this constant hamster wheel. And so I'm definitely having to try to figure out balance for me and what that looks like. And one of the things I do, so there's a lot of creators that vlog 7 days a week. I don't vlog 7 days a week. I do 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then I do a whole weekend vlog on that next Monday to give myself 2 or 3 day break.
Yeah, I think that would be highly necessary. Just us discussing it makes me a little tired.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too just like need to understand that there's not necessarily urgency. I find myself wanting to work a lot and being like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. But like, what if I don't? That's fine too. Like, no one's gonna be like, oh my God, you didn't do like this work, because everyone tends to move slower than I do. And I'm like my worst critic of like, I need to do more. And people just need to chill.
Maybe you should redefine what more means too, like is more 2 more pull requests, or is more reading a book that might help enhance some other aspect of you that you want to develop, or, just recharging, going for a walk.
People have to find their escapism, right? Like, I think for me, like, my parents were big on reading. Like, I got burned out of reading because of growing up in like grade school, and just the amount of massive books and novels that they pushed on us. I was just done with reading. Done. Just like, you know what? Like, I'm tired of reading, and that's still it's still today. I don't like reading. And so for me though, mine's like podcasting or playing ice hockey, or, going, believe it or not, I'm actually enjoying like being outside at night, feeding the horses. I go out by myself. It's like therapy just to have quiet. But you got to find what works for you. And I think too many people are trying to do what the other person said to do. And it's like, listen, like if you don't like it, that's okay. Just do what you enjoy and focus on that.
Are you an introverted extrovert then? Do you go outside because you need away time to recharge?
I'm an introverted extrovert. Yes, I'm extremely introverted. I have over leveraged myself. I am running on fucking fumes right now from today. Just to be totally
you're out there, boom, 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 and then
I mean, that's just the way I am, and I mean, it's a whole nother conversation. I mean, it took a toll in marriage early on, and in my marriage, 9 years of my career, I worked in the office, and I hit. And this is obviously, we may be wrapping up here very soon, but this may be a little bit of a bomb drop. But like, I hit depression in 2018 pretty hard, and like my counselor was like, "Hey, you need to like seek out we were in marriage counseling, and my marriage counselor was like, listen, you got to find somebody. Like, you're at a point where I would consider this depression." And for me, is what I realized is that I was so constantly stimulated at work, right? Because I was like meeting people day in, day out. I wasn't vlogging, I wasn't content creating then. I was just meeting so many people, and I was around people in the office. It was just stimulation.
And you're on. And
yeah, it's just
right?
It's just
you're gonna be on.
Yeah, just on consistently. And so what I've realized now is that working from home has helped me so much, because I can kind of have my own space and moderate the people coming at me at one time, which has been huge.
Well, I'm glad you dropped that truth bomb, and I agree that could be a whole another episode for us to discuss, because I think that's a reality too. Like, hiring is one thing and plays into all these other aspects, but like, mental well-being in tech, whether you have a job or not, I think that's its own thing as well.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I've talked about that a lot with the job search. Is you got to find. I mean, I'm in it right now. You got to find balance, right? You can't crank out your job search 8 hours a day. You just can't. And I think it spurts, and you got to give yourself breaks, and you just got to really be aware of how you're feeling. And I think people just try to barrel through it, and they just become miserable.
Yeah, by your 30th rejection, which through the resume process, it's not as big of a deal. Once you get past a hiring manager, you start to become more emotionally involved. But still, You get a few bad hits, and then you have 4 rejection emails one morning, and you're like, what is the point today?
Yeah, so we do have like less than 10 minutes left here. I want to circle back to some of the Roanoke and Smith Mountain Lake talk and find out more about your life there, or how much time you spent there.
So my mom and dad both met in Roanoke. Both my parents were military brats. My mom's side, her father was Air Force. My dad's side was Navy. My dad's side retired in Roanoke, and they sold real estate at Smith Mountain Lake. Now, honestly, if you talk to some old heads out there, they probably remember Dodie and Maurice Desseyn out there because they kind of owned that area. And then my mom settled down in Roanoke. I think her dad, my grandfather, got like an Amway sales job. And so that's where they kind of settled down. And so my dad went to Cave Springs High School. My mom went to Patrick Henry High School. My dad was a lifeguard. That's how they met. So we grew up going up there a lot. My grandmother lives on Stratford Park Drive, which is...
Don't give the number. Don't give the number.
Yeah, is by the Roanoke Wiener Stand on... It's
famous, Chuck.
I'm a child. I'm sorry.
Say what?
I'm a child. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. So there's that. And then my dad's family moved out Smith Mountain Lake, grew up every summer going up there. It was a big house, big family. We used to all kind of go there. We would be there for like a week or 2 at a time when I was younger. Just such a special time. And what's crazy is like, you don't meet many people from Roanoke or even like not from Roanoke or just even lived in Roanoke. It's a very small town. It's very historical. And I get really excited. I don't know. I grew up trout fishing in the Roanoke Valley with my grandfather. I hated fishing, but I hate it so much. It's like a good memory now because it's like seared into my mind because I hated it so much when I was younger that now it's like, oh, like I can remember it so well. And then my dad grew up sailing on Smith Mountain Lake. Man, it's just beautiful. I love it up there. I like legit, if I had enough money, I would literally just buy a house in Roanoke and just like live there like 6 months out of the year. So I love it. And
we have enough houses here that you can use them if you want.
Say what?
We have enough houses here that you can use one of them if you want. My parents have a Roanoke house and a Smith Mountain Lake house, so we're not using both at the same time. Yeah,
that's crazy. Well, then I'll just hit you up next time. I just want to come out to Roanoke and Smith. I'm like, which one is your parents not at? I'll just come crash.
Yeah,
there.
Right. I'm thinking I'm gonna sell my Phoenix house and then just basically crash back and forth and never pay a mortgage again.
It would be almost like an adoption situation. We got to like go to the opposite house. You're just kind of like in transit. Like,
yeah. I just take care of the other house while they're not there.
Yeah, you're the caretaker.
Yeah. No, but that's so crazy. So for those of you who are still listening, an hour through, thank you. Robbie and I, we weren't live yet, and I was like, getting to know them, and I was like, man, like, where are you at? And he was like, well, Virginia. And every time I hear Virginia, I'm like, well, Roanoke, right? Because Roanoke's like not close to like DC, but I'm always like, Roanoke.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, tell me more. And then we end up finding out that Robbie lives on Smith Mountain Lake right now, where my grandparents lived, that's crazy because I've never met anybody who knows about Smith Mountain Lake. So
yeah. I had never left like, I don't know how many miles it is, like a 60-mile radius or whatever, because I grew up in Roanoke and then went to college at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. And
you went to Virginia Tech? Dude, that's a beautiful area too, man. It's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
And then South Carolina's got Shane Beamer.
I know.
Beamer's son.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I've watched a lot of like they did a like ESPN special about like South Carolina, I think, and like Frank Beamer was at one of the games, and it was like a good special teams game or something, and he's like, "That's the one you like, Dad." Like,
Yeah, our special teams at the University of South Carolina is like literally one of the top. It's Beamer ball, right?
Yep.
And that's just what they lived on, and it makes a huge difference. Roanoke's just great, and people are like, "The hell, I got to go to Roanoke." This is like this ad spot. This podcast is sponsored by Roanoke.
Yeah, sponsored by the city of Roanoke.
You like train tracks?
Sailing?
Come to Roanoke.
No.
If you like train tracks in a time capsule of a city, it's like when I say time capsule, it's like the 70s and 80s. Like there's some new development for sure, but like for the most part, it's like when my parents go up there, like things are still the same from like the 70s. It's crazy.
Yep.
Interesting.
Exact same. Yep.
I like train tracks. I used to hop trains to school. I was a bad kid.
Also, another thing too, they have more fairs, like art fairs and craft fairs, than any small town. And that may be my grandma finding all of them, but literally, like, there's always something going on in Roanoke for a town that size. It's crazy.
What else is grandma going to do? She's going to the fair. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, my grandma, she's like 85 years old, and she's still active, like walking with weights. It's because she's German.
Yes.
I'm
German and Irish.
She escaped Hitler, or her grandmother escaped Hitler. And, well, she did, and she was bombed. She has a piece of Berlin wall in her apartment. It's crazy.
Wow, that is
Nuts.
cool
She's
stuff.
like off the boat, and she learned English by nannying and watching cartoons with kids. Crazy.
That's awesome though.
Yeah.
That's a fun story. So we can
She
just
makes a mean goulash too.
Oh, I bet.
Oh,
I love
absolutely.
goulash.
yeah,
Too. It's
same.
so good.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, before we go down that path, speaking of wieners, I have so many questions, but I always, if anyone's been to the Cincinnati area, speaking of wieners, Gold Star or Skyline?
I'm gonna be honest, it's all trash.
Oh,
That's the right answer.
And we were
I'm gonna be
friends,
honest, I
but
haven't
now we're
had.
not.
What was the other one? Gold Star.
Gold
Yeah,
Star.
I've only
chili
had
is-
I have
Skyline.
not had that.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah,
not
most
had it. But
people-
if it's anything like, so my wife and I,
Cincinnati chili is its own thing.
It really is. It's a very odd thing. The amount of shredded cheese they give you is borderline insanity.
It's a heart
so much
attack.
shredded
Yeah.
cheese.
It's-
That
and it
covers the
becomes a
flavor of the
cocoon.
chili. Yeah.
But
It becomes a cocoon into the bun.
Yeah, it's just a cocoon of carbs and fat.
Yes.
The thing that really I will tell you this. I started eating chili up there with just cheese. I added the oyster crackers.
Yes.
That changed the dynamic.
It does.
So I do have to say it's not total utter
Salty
trash.
component.
But I do have to say if you're doing Skyline, you got to put the oyster crackers in it.
And
Like,
the hot sauce too. A little bit even. It's
you
just
have
it's
hot
like
sauce.
Frank's.
I think hot sauce. So basically,
Frank's-
what
it's
you're
like
saying
Frank's
is like
hot sauce.
Skyline alone is trash. You got to have all the accoutrement.
Well,
with it.
Skyline is trash because I'm a Gold Star boy, but that's a whole other. Again,
I
another
gotta try
story. We
Gold
can talk
Star
about
now.
our families. Yes,
Gold Star.
it is
Okay, I gotta try one up
less
there
less
next.
watery. It's more like saucy, and then doesn't quite. It's a little less spice, so it's. I feel like it's more balanced.
I don't think there was any spice in the.
Yeah, well,
You don't mean hot
I
spice, right? You mean like
yeah, just
flavor
like
spice.
tangy. Like
yeah. It was a little. They tend to like make it too watery and then try to punch the spice. And I want a sauce. I want a chili sauce. Is essentially
That
what
makes
it
sense.
is.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. But I was not impressed. We got it late. We were at Vaco Cincinnati's Christmas party, and then we went there a little inebriated and had it back at our hotel. And I was like,
You yeah. Or at least you know what? Better that than White Castle. I'm just saying.
I had White Castle one time. I think my body almost literally blew up. Like
Yeah.
literally almost blew
I'm-
up.
I'm
like,
certain
like it
most
didn't
of
know
the-
what to do, and it just kind of like expanded and kept expanding. I thought
this
I was
is not
gonna die.
digestible. Yeah.
No, I'm certain most of my digestive issues are associated to the amount of White Castles that I had at 2 a.m. post like Milwaukee's Best or Miller High Life or something.
Couple
through my
40s.
20s. No, I didn't try to do 40s. Come on, keg stands.
I do have to say, Cincinnati, shout out Cincinnati, some of the best coffee and baked goods. Like, I'm a big coffee guy. Great coffee shops up there. And then some of, like, is it Baked Bear? Or no, that's
Buskin is the big bakery.
The food's great. The culture. I mean, literally, like, I'm going to tell you this. Like, I like Cincinnati better than Nashville. And of course, like, I may live there and I'm like, this sucks. I'll go to Nashville. But, like, my wife and I talked about it. It's way more eclectic. It's way more cultural. Like, Nashville is just honky tonks and white and like just subway tile cuisine, American Southern cuisine. Like Cincinnati, you get some like heavy German, and you got all the OTR. Was it on the Rhine, over the Rhine?
Over the Rhine.
Over the
I
Rhine.
love it though. I love the
Yeah, it's
shout
just-
out OTR is
It's
like
so good, and just the area is great, and the people are great. The tech community is great up there. Shout out Michael Richardson, who runs Momentum Conference. I got to give him a plug here. It's the software developer conference in Cincinnati. I spoke last year. There was it was like a perfect amount, 500 or 600 people. The sessions were packed. It was fantastic. So
Robbie and I
Michael,
are going.
I would love to come back if you invite me. So
yeah, me too.
I'll go.
Michael, I don't know
Yeah,
you,
I'll go.
but bring me.
Yeah, bring us.
it's great. I would actually highly recommend it, especially because it's close to home.
Nice.
Cool. We are at time here. Are there things you want to plug before we end?
I have a podcast, Guidance Counselor 2.0. Again, the whole point of that podcast is to really help engineering leaders and job seekers level up both hiring and the job search. You can find me on all social media at Desseyn, TDESSEYN. I do the whole thing, the Discords, the newsletters, the texting communities, yada, yada. So just find me on social and then follow the links to the bottom of the funnel and join whatever you want to join.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave us some ratings and reviews. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time.